When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Ride with John Pollock and waiting the 18. That makes sense that these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Ride for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Ride for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind to Raw. I'm John Pollock, along with the Toronto Raptors supporting Wai Ting.
Hey John, how you doing? And before we even start, happy birthday.
Okay, thank you.
It is
nice
John
of you.
Pollock's birthday, March 9th, everybody. So everybody, go on his Twitter timeline at I am John Pollock. However you want to reach him, send the man some very well birthday wishes.
Why don't you just have a thought and send it telepathically? I'll see how many thoughts.
Why do that? Well, do that as well. In your daily meditation today, give some more warm thoughts to John. But I'm sure he appreciates your comments, everything.
How are you doing today?
Pretty well, man. Yeah. How are you?
It was a lot of stuff this weekend. You did more than me.
Oh,
But it was a lot.
We, you know what? Thank you for kind of volleying that up because I really want to thank everybody that was associated with Post Wrestling this weekend on just the incredible work, the incredible output everybody put forth, including Kate from Montreal, who did a tremendous job on Rewind to SmackDown this Friday, joining me. Hope to hear from you again very soon. Our friends at Up Next were just busting their asses. Great watch along. From what I could tell on the Twitch feed. If you haven't seen this clip of their reaction to the exploding barbed wire match, I urge you all to go to the Up Next Instagram or their Twitch channel. It has to be seen. It is tremendous. They've got a post show for the show up on their Patreon as well. So shout outs to those guys. John, you and Phil with a big UFC post show this past weekend, covering a very, from what I could tell, controversial evening.
It was a very late evening, yes, and it had a lot to talk about on that show on Saturday night into the wee hours of Sunday morning, where you were not watching the UFC pay-per-view. Instead, you were breaking down the season finale, the series finale, really, of WandaVision.
Yeah, me, WH Park, and Nate Milton. We had a big...
I was stunned that those two have never... That was the first time they have interacted?
No. They've done podcasts together, I believe, on their own shows. Like I think, like one of the Cruel Summers, I believe.
Oh, that's right, they did.
Never the three of us together. Not talking about this.
Oh, okay, the three. That's what you guys were talking about. Because I was thinking, wow, have they never done a show together? But you're right, they did Cruel Summer together.
So, yeah, we had a live series finale, and it was just like, it was the best way to be able to wrap up this, WandaVision coverage. And it doesn't end on Friday because we'll be back with the bonus edition for patrons on Saturday this coming week, talking about the documentary that's about to release and previewing Falcon and the Winter Soldier and delivering an exclusive interview I'll have with one of the cast members, even talking about WandaVision. So it's going to be a big week if you're a fan of WH Park. Isn't it, John?
The man is operating a slow-moving coup here at Post Wrestling. He will be coming at us 3 days in a row. We have, me and Wai have joint custody of him. On Friday, I will be with him for Post Pro Res. Then on Saturday, it's the long and winding Royal Road. And who are we going to find on the long and winding Royal Road, holding his thumb out, but Buffalo, New York's own Brandon Howard/Thurston, who will be reviewing the finals of the Real World Tag League from 1996.
Speaking of WH Park, the three of us had the best interaction with him this afternoon where John, as always, you put out the schedule every Monday. You do a great job of it. You've been doing a great job with the graphics too. Finding the thumbnails and putting the positioning of the thumbnails.
That tone, everyone, it's really cute how you're doing that stuff. It's really nice. Really cute.
I actually mean it. Like there are weeks where I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. He took he found a great JPEG. Anyway, so then like WH messages me, and I guess he's not necessarily aware like who is in charge, but he's like, yeah, I think John made a mistake with Long and Winding Royal Road this week. It's Brandon Thurston, not Brandon Howard. That's going to be joining me. And I'm like, they're the same guy.
No, his words were, might want to fix this. And that's it. And I'm cross-referencing. I'm figuring I got the match wrong. I'm looking at my text.
That's what I thought,
I'm going
too.
back. I'm looking. I'm like, did I miss? It's like, no, I have the match right. I have the date right. What's the issue here? And then I realized that I had used Brandon's work name, and he has more so, I think he's gone solely now to the Brandon Thurston branding. So the branding of Brandon, we will keep it consistent. Brandon Thurston will be joining us on Saturday.
It's a very complex world of monikers out there, but I think we got to the bottom of it. But anyway, you'll be able to catch WH on Friday with Post ProRes. He'll be on the long and winding road. He'll be joining me again for Rewandavision's bonus episode. And what better way to celebrate WH Park Week here at Post Wrestling than 20% off of the Post ProRes t-shirt exclusively for patrons only this week, a part of our rolling deals this week from Monday, or from this point Tuesday until next Monday. Get 20% off of the beautiful Post ProRes tee in support of WH Park's fine work. So that is available for all patrons at postwrestlingcafe.com.
It is a great time to be a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe. Not just that deal going on. Tuesday, we're going to have the Ask Away mailbag show. We'll be back live on Wednesday night for our Double Plus patrons. And in addition to the shows that we put out this weekend, I also have an interview up today with Evan Husney, the executive producer, co-creator of Dark Side of the Ring. Their new Confidential talk show is premiering Tuesday night on Vice TV. So a half-hour chat with Evan going through this, which is really just a bridge between the two seasons that they wanted to have something, and also some details on season 3 as well. What topics they can confirm, and kind of shooting this entire season during a pandemic where they're doing 14 episodes this season. So by far their most of any season. And it's interesting because Evan has been in the States traveling all over the place, and some interesting discussion there just about the, shooting this whole thing during a pandemic.
TV production, like during this period, is fascinating to me, as I'm starting to find out, like by looking into a bit of WandaVision and seeing how they did it all during the pandemic. So I'm really curious to see how the season turns out for them.
All right, so check all of that up at postwrestling.com. And the final thing of our in-house notes, we mentioned it last week, Post Podcast Day is happening on Saturday, April the 3rd. If you are a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, you will have access that day to watch and listen to all of the live shows that will begin at noon Eastern that day. We have already mentioned that Way and I will be doing a live edition of Ask Away, taking calls for as long as they're coming in. And our second show will be a special live edition of the British Wrestling Experience with Martin Bushby and Benno, and they're going to be tackling, on the 20th anniversary, the history of WCW in Europe. So they will be going through for an hour, looking back at WCW's travels throughout the continent of Europe. So that will be part of Post Podcast Day. Again, these will all be live shows happening that day, and cafe members at any tier will have full access.
Very exciting. So again, that is April 3rd.
Yes,
Saturday.
This is the week before WrestleMania. So we will be getting everyone set with that, and more show announcements to come. Let's move on over, though, because there was a fair amount of news. Tony Khan did a post-show media call. Did you get to hear any of this?
I've heard most of it. I've heard most of the news coming out of it.
So obviously the main topic of discussion was going to be the ending to the pay-per-view. And I mean, I really took it that Tony Khan was not trying to, the way, it was conveyed to us when we were doing the show live last night was almost like he was kind of positioning it like it was supposed to go that way. I certainly did not get that impression listening to this. It was more so he's now pivoting to go with this story that Kenny Omega made a bad bomb, essentially. It's not an ideal storyline, but they're really in a corner here. You have to apply some logic to what happened, and it was an unfortunate situation. And I am curious to Wednesday's show of how they come out of this and handle it. like, I don't think you can even show a replay of what they did on Wednesday. Like, you can probably show some stills of the brutality of the earlier explosions and stuff like that. But the big moment, it will be interesting how they address it on Wednesday, and not like there would be one train of thought to just, we'll pretend everything was great and we're just going to go forward. But I think that there does come a degree of kind of respect for your audience that, hey, we're going to level with you guys. We know you saw what we executed and how they go forward with that.
Yeah, I don't see them pretend. I mean, they haven't. You know, the story that Moxley right after at the end of the match gave to the live audience is that they recognize that this bomb did not go off the way they probably intended, and they were putting the blame on Kenny Omega. And on the phone call, it was like Tony Khan essentially saying, "Oh, thank goodness we had this Kenny Omega thing. We can basically kind of pivot and blame, you know, for this kind of dud of a bomb." The thing that I am definitely curious to see how they explain is Eddie Kingston. And that really is the thing that complicates it all. I mean, if by the end of the match, Eddie Kingston, that spot wasn't a part of it, and it was just, you know, Moxley waking up from a dud bomb, I mean, that would have been fine. But the fact that they had Eddie Kingston be knocked out and selling the fact that he was knocked out even as Moxley came to, that I think will take a bit more of a creative explanation. You know, could it be like he simply fainted? Could it be edibles, as somebody suggested, like Brandon suggested last night? Like, I don't know, but they're gonna have to be a bit more creative, and there's really kind of no hiding something like this from an AEW audience. We're talking about an audience that really demands, I think, truth, or at least maybe a bit more authenticity in, I think, their storytelling, you know, to the point where, if you remember the Jericho MJF thing, or MJF Sammy Guevara thing taking place backstage, they felt the need to kind of justify the invisible camera deal that was, to me, a bit of a snub. So I think they'll be creative with it. There's any, like, this is pro wrestling. Things go wrong all the time, and you try to explain it with some sort of creative, logical story afterwards. And I don't think it ruined the match, yes, unfortunately, but it's not going to affect the company in the least.
I think that this is something that they will work overtime to make it work. And I mean, you just give it a few moments of thought. The idea that Eddie Kingston is running into the ring and, like, they're on the verge, like their life is flashing in front of him. Like, that was the panic they were trying to convey on you, the viewer, that this countdown was listening to. And it could be as simple as Eddie Kingston and Moxley, like, sharing a moment or something, that they were actually, like, here. I don't know. It's really tough to explain this, but I think there is a way that you can get around that they will give a lot of thought to. And a great promo, I think your audience will be extremely forgiving if you show them that, hey, we have put a lot of thought into this to make it logical for you.
Yes. Now, you and I were talking about how that whole thing was set to, like, write Moxley off, but I mean, the idea...
That was a guess. That was just a guess.
Right. But now the idea seemed to be, like, you know, thinking a bit more about it. I mean, more likely it was probably to write Eddie Kingston off for a period, right? Because he would have been the one, if the explosion went off, to take the brunt of the punishment because he protected Moxley.
Well, I thought it was going to be both would disappear, one from the explosion, the other, like, Moxley should be at bare minimum, like, in a wheelchair or a neck brace on, if we even see him on Wednesday. Like, that was the most brutal one-winged angel that we've seen in AEW. So that the effect of that should be, you know, sold.
Right. You know, in either case, I mean, it seems like it'll be the implications of a Moxley Kingston team up to go up against Kenny and the Good Brothers. I'm really interested in that. Just, you know, Eddie Kingston versus Kenny Omega is a match that I'm really excited for. So I really didn't. I felt terrible for them. We said all we wanted to say, I think, on that post show, but I am excited about the future with this storyline.
Some good news that Tony Khan had was that their preliminary streaming numbers were at a record high. So he feels this could end up being one of the most, if not the most, purchased AEW show. And some other announcements, or at least news and notes from that call, was that it was Jay Riso, Christian, that contacted Tony Khan and said he wanted to wrestle in AEW on a regular basis, and they had known each other for the past 7 years, and Tony Khan didn't even realize he wasn't under contract at WWE and was kicking himself when he saw Christian return at the Rumble that he wasn't able to get him. So that's kind of how things came together in the last couple of weeks. said that the Young Bucks against Pac and Phoenix is likely to happen in the next several weeks, and definitely before Double or Nothing coming up in May. And the other thing about Ethan Page coming in was that they did want to get some more depth on the heel side, because they felt they were a bit thin after the entire Dark Order turned babyface. So those were some of the notes from Tony Khan. On the WWE front, the move over to Peacock, we got a bit more clarity about all of this. They put out this release today, including that they are going to shut down the WWE Network app in the US on April the 4th. And that's when Peacock will become the exclusive home of the WWE Network in the US. And they're stating it clearly here: to continue streaming WWE Network content, fans will need to sign up for Peacock instead of the prior indication that there would be a migration process over. Also, Peacock has stated that on the launch will be March 18th, and it's going to feature all the past WrestleManias, as well as all of the pay-per-views from the past calendar year, along with Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions, Chronicle, Icons, TV episodes, some of the documentaries. But the other pay-per-views and other parts of the library are not going to be available on the launch day. It says that they will continually add network content to the library, making the entire network archive, including every WWE, WCW, and ECW pay-per-view event in history, available to stream on demand before SummerSlam. So it's going to be the first time where the US version of the network is going to be a diminished version of what the international subscribers are going to have, because outside of the US, it will be unaffected.
Yes. And I think today's news comes, to be a pretty big disappointment for a lot of US subscribers. I mean, they were kind of positioning, or at least to me, looking from the outside, like this transition would be relatively seamless, that people's accounts would somehow be automatically carried over to Peacock, and that is not the case. People are going to have to do a bit more legwork on their own. I mean, think about the people who might not even be watching wrestling right now, not being aware of any of this.
None of this was said on TV tonight. Like, you have to go out and seek this information out yourself on the website or elsewhere. And it's like, there's definitely going to be confusion. That's why I think it's very important.
They'll get an email or something, I hope, explaining all this. But even so, yeah, it's a lot more work than I think they were expecting.
I think it's very important that they are launching this weeks before WrestleMania and not trying to coincide this with WrestleMania.
I actually feel like they should extend that, like kind of doubling up period a while longer than that, simply because like you have a lot of people who subscribe to the network for various reasons, and a lot of them are to get access to that older archive. You're taking that away potentially for 4 months, and with this transition to Peacock, and who knows if they'll even hit that SummerSlam target. So I feel like
the point of this though is to get all these people onto Peacock, and if you let WrestleMania come and go, there will be people that don't jump onto Peacock. They're going to see WrestleMania and they're not going to move over. So I think that's, ideally this would have been a better timed transition to move all of this content over, and something that you would hopefully have been able to figure out before the announcement was made. Because this definitely causes some confusion based on how this was initially positioned to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it'll remain to be seen. I mean, with transitions like these, with really any sort of like skin change or like format change at all, I mean, you can guarantee there's going to be a storm of complaints. So I feel terrible for whoever is handling the social media for the WWE Network on that day, but it might not be a very fun day for you.
And I think I'm going to be very curious how Fastlane goes for that first weekend, which maybe by design they are choosing not to promote this event on Raw in any form or fashion so that the demand is not overwhelming.
Are you serious?
Dude, was Fastlane even mentioned tonight? We have 2 matches. And they're SmackDown based. Like, you have Jax and Baszler against Sasha Banks and Bianca, and Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan. What is even going to headline on the Raw side? You've built up no challengers. you can't possibly be doing Lashley and Drew at Fastlane. I thought for sure tonight they were going to announce that it's going to be Drew and Sheamus in a last man standing match, and the winner gets Bobby, which maybe they'll still announce. But, I mean, we've got one more episode left. So unless you're going to just announce it online. But they made no push for Fastlane on tonight's show.
Man, I feel like I would have at least seen some sort of billboard or something. But, I wonder if that's more just because of the poor layout of this show, or if it was any deeper reasoning of them purposely not promoting this pay-per-view for some reason, which I really can't see.
And then there was other details here from the Verge outlet just about the fact that they're going to be getting rid of the match markers and that the search function will not be as intricate as the current WWE Network version. So Peacock, half the price, half the quality is what it sounds like.
The half the price, I think, is, the lone saving grace of this whole thing. But then you are going to get commercials, so
Yep.
you're kind of getting that too. But by all accounts, it does seem like somewhat diminished of an experience, because it's simply Peacock taking over some of the content. It's going to have to be completely reintegrated. But you're also going to get The Office, so that should make you feel better.
Do you think that it's, let's just say of the, they have at their last earnings, they had just over 1 million domestic subscribers. Let's say it's a small percentage of that are the ones that are watching that archive stuff. Is this going to drive some of those people to try and just go the VPN route and go get an international version of the network that has all of it and just go that way, even if it's a small number? Like, I think there will be some that they're going to want that library that they've been accustomed to having.
Sure, if that's even possible. I mean, I don't know what it's like, because I know what it's like to be a Canadian and to subscribe to an American account. I have to use my PayPal to kind of change my address and all that. I don't know what it's like for an American trying to, for instance, get a Canadian account or get a European WWE account. I'm sure it's possible, but that's something I'm sure we'll hear more about in the weeks to come.
What else do we have here? William Regal is going to make 2 game-changing announcements on NXT this week, which, is that possible? Like, if you change the game and then you change the game again, is it almost like, is that like a 360-degree change? Do we go right back to where we started? Like, 2 game-changing announcements, or are these aspects of the game?
I think there are varying degrees to which you can change a game. It doesn't have to be a 180-degree change. It could be like a 45-degree change and then another 45-degree change.
It seems to be, the stories that are out there about the women's tag titles being introduced, which I'm not a big fan of, and it looks like a 2-night takeover for the Wednesday and Thursday of WrestleMania week.
Do you think they might possibly announce NXT moving to Tuesdays?
I don't think so. That seems like a weird thing for Regal to announce in the body of the show.
That is game changing. That is the end of the game, everybody. Like, that is actually the game changing thing that they would announce.
It is.
We've lost.
I don't know if they want to necessarily make that announcement even a month out. I don't know. I'm not expecting that one. I'm expecting it to be kind of on-screen changes, like takeover, tag titles.
Third game-changing announcement to come.
Like, how does Regal even announce that? Like, what's even the impetus behind that? Like, because it's like an in-character announcement.
You're going to get NXT quicker. You're going to get it 1 day earlier because we just love our universe so much.
Also, this was all over tonight's Raw, was that tickets for WrestleMania will be going on sale next Tuesday, a limited amount. They have not said what the capacity will be at Raymond James Stadium for the 2 nights, but tickets will go on sale next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, with prices ranging from $3,500 to $2,500 US. It adds in the press release that WWE is coordinating with local partners and government officials regarding safety protocols for WrestleMania and will share details in the coming weeks. Information on additional WrestleMania week events is forthcoming. I would think you would want to make that announcement now before people buy tickets. Like, wouldn't you want to know those? Maybe others don't even care about the safety protocols in place, but I would think you would want that kind of in conjunction with your on sale date. What are the actual parameters of me going to this event going to be? Am I going to be able to be in a pod with people that I'm with? Am I going to be next to a stranger?
Who knows, like maybe what the rollout is. Who knows how firm those details are yet, perhaps. I don't know. I will say, like, I think at this point, I don't think they'll have any trouble selling these tickets and selling.
I don't think they're going to either. It's only going to be handicapped by a lack of international travelers coming to the show. But I do think there is going to be a good amount of demand for this. Like if we're talking like 30,000 people each night, are those numbers you feel they can safely hit?
Is that what football's doing?
That would be a roughly half capacity at Raymond James Stadium.
Yeah, wow, that's actually way more than I thought. But I think that they'll hit that for WrestleMania.
And then we have the New Japan Cup. Have you been keeping up with the New Japan Cup at all?
Just the results.
On Saturday, they had a terrific show with Shingo Takagi defeating Kazuchika Okada, and that was the same show that had Minoru Suzuki beating Tomoaki Honma in what had to be Honma's best match in a long time. I would say probably his best singles match since the neck injury. It was quite the performance that really turned back the clock for Honma, and then also had Kenta beating Juice Robinson. And then Sunday show, you would have really enjoyed Zack Sabre Jr. and Gabriel Kidd. It went 17 minutes and was a great kind of performance for Gabriel Kidd to be presented as like close to Zach's equal in this match. It was like one of those really important matches just for Gabriel Kidd to be competitive with Zack Sabre Jr. before he was submitted. And then Will Ospreay was a miracle worker here with Hiroyoshi Tenzan, who again had one of his best matches in years with Ospreay winning, but they went 13 and a half minutes, and this was Tenzan looking so much better than he has and he's even looked like there was a period he hit where it was really rough. I don't think he's at that decline, but he knew this was a big match to have, and he was in there with the guy to have it with. So there have been some really strong matches so far in this tournament. And we've got the first round still to go on Tuesday and Wednesday before they move on to the second round. But I would say that looking at the brackets and such, you have to imagine that Shingo's probably a favorite on one side of the bracket. I would say Ospreay and Jay White is probably where it comes down to on the other side of the bracket. But I could see an Ospreay-Shingo final at the end of this.
Okan beat Naito as well.
Okan beat Naito. Yes, they had a fine match, and it was Okan submitting Naito using like a knee bar. So Naito was out in the first round. Okada was out in the first round. Those were the notable eliminations. So I think if you're looking for who is going to challenge Ibushi, I think that you could go with Ospreay. You could go with Shingo. Tanahashi, they've teased that because after Ibushi beat El Desperado, he kind of called out Hiroshi Tanahashi, who's been negative to this idea of unifying the titles. And Okada, it was, I wouldn't say a red herring how they went into this. I just think they were not going to put Okada with Ibushi on a show like Sakura Genesis. That to me is a long-term match you build to and just kind of teasing it now, and they'll get to that match down the road.
How many brackets left, or how many blocks?
We've got
rounds left, I mean.
Well, we've got to finish the first round. Tomorrow's got Yuji Nagata and Yota Tsuji, and then Tomohiro Ishii and Sonata. And then Wednesday, it's Finlay versus Chase Owens, Yoshihashi against Yujiro. And the main event is Jay White against Toa Henare, which is easily the biggest match of Toa Hanare's career. That's a really interesting match. You would assume Jay White is winning this one, but I think Toa Henare will be this is huge for Henare.
I mean, if it will be his only appearance in this, and it really his first like really real prominent match since the pandemic began, so I'm sure he'll be putting full effort into it as always.
White could afford to lose that one.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you do Tanahashi and Henare, like teacher versus student, in the second round. I could see that.
It would add to the list of upsets, which would make it interesting, but I personally don't see it.
Second round, you've also got the Great Okan versus Toru Yano on Thursday to look forward to.
All right. Set your alarm.
And last thing here, SmackDown did 2,252,000 viewers, best number in the past month. 0.60 in the 18 to 49 demo. They were second for the night, but number one among all network shows in 18-34. So a good number for SmackDown on Friday. Raw on Monday decided to go right back to what worked last week, and mid-afternoon announced that Bobby Lashley will defend the title against The Miz. This is after all weekend long they promoted that there would be a championship celebration hosted by the Hurt Business for Bobby Lashley, which we just never got.
I mean, I suppose maybe they celebrate by wrestling.
Walking into the venue at the beginning of the show, that was the celebration.
An interview with Sarah Schreiber. What better way to celebrate?
That was it. Congratulations, Bobby. So they arrive, all of the Hurt Business with their titles, and Lashley is interviewed saying that he went through a lot, of which it would have broken others. He waited 16 years for this opportunity, and he's going to set an example for the locker room in tonight's rematch and walk into WrestleMania as champion. The almighty era has begun.
I thought he sounded very good. I mean, at this point, it's kind of rare to get a Lashley promo all on his own without MVP, but he sounded very confident. I mean, I believed him here, talking about his own history of, I suppose, struggle. I guess the ECW championship just doesn't really matter.
Impact, none of those titles matter.
But he sounded really good, and to my surprise, they are definitely leaning towards this being a bit of a babyface moment for this guy. Did you get that sense, John?
I did. I think with Bobby, I think ultimately he will be a babyface, and my thought is that MVP somehow leads to the finish at Mania, and you've got Bobby coming out of WrestleMania as a babyface, probably feuding with MVP's newest. You need someone new for MVP to be attached with. I don't see any of the current Hurt Business members being that person, but that's totally a vibe. I think long term you'll see Bobby turn.
Well, I found it interesting on this particular show because, number one, he was going up against The Miz, so I think he had to lean a bit more babyface. I also think online you had a lot more kind of warm reception to Bobby Lashley's victory than maybe anybody they might have expected, and so fans are kind of latching on to this. Conversely, on this episode, Drew to me came across very much like a heel with his kind of whiny type of demanding tantrum personality. So I found it really interesting, and the element of fans, we've kind of discussed it in the past, but the element of fans being in the stadium for that match, I really wonder how they will react to both dynamics.
It's the first time we're going to see Drew in a big setting since this whole push began. Not since it began, but I mean, in the lead up to WrestleMania, we just saw him win the Rumble and then those TVs for the next month. And then that's it. The real meat of this whole title run was all without fans. So that is interesting. You never know how the crowd is going to react and then if that influences thinking, but I just think overall, look at the baby faces they have swung and missed on. That Drew, turning him to me would be such a poor idea after all you've put into him. So, if anything, I could see Drew and Bobby coming out of Mania with the mutual respect, and Bobby then fizzling off with the Hurt Business and feuding with MVP's next protege. The Miz and Morrison came out. Every week, John Morrison's hair is just there's stuff going on in that hair. It's something could be living in that hair.
I think that's the Bray Wyatt story you want to wait for.
Oh, okay.
The black shit cut in the hair, moving from the mouth to the hair.
Well, speaking of, substances coming up from your stomach, maybe that's what was happening to The Miz last week because he noted his stomach cramps. He should have been believed last week, yet he still defended his title, had the champion's advantage, and he admits the champion's advantage is shady. We need rules like the UFC where a disqualification can lead to a title change. He outsmarted everyone. Bobby blew it and then was threatened and got brutalized by Bobby Lashley. No repercussions. Well, he's going to win the title back. And that would be our opening match. And my God, they gave this superstar entrance for Bobby Lashley as he came out. This big montage of clips as he's coming out. They're doing the whole big promotional push behind Bobby Lashley as the new king of this program.
I really enjoy it. Even with the VR lightning bolts that they gave the guy. I mean, I think any fresh coat of paint just to kind of reinforce the man's new main event status tells the audience that we should be paying attention to him right now.
So Drew McIntyre was watching in the back. They fought on the floor for a while. This was definitely longer than their match last week. Miz drew Lashley to the floor, missed a sliding drop kick, and then he's run into the post, spine buster in the ring, and it's Lashley destroying the Miz before he sets up and applies the Hurt Lock, and Miz submits in 9 minutes and 5 seconds.
Miz, I suppose, did a bit better this week than last, surviving a little bit longer, but this was still basically a squash for Lashley, cements his victory, gets another TV segment out of the whole thing, and he continues to display just great intensity. I think they've done a great job with him this year, and it's only amplified now that there's a clear direction for him going into Mania as champion. This also seems to write the Miz off from the title picture, and people are going to have their opinions about whether or not he should have been in this position in the first place. But I have a real appreciation for him. I think he does a great job in that character, making up these excuses to justify getting another match after we've seen the man basically get beaten up. He was fun to watch here. He's out of his mind, but because he has so much persistence and conviction in the way he talks, you can see somebody like Pierce being like, okay, fine, here's a rematch. Just make it stop,
Yeah. I think, were you surprised that there was nothing kind of setting up Miz for his next program after this? This was just pretty much
no Bad Bunny on the show, nor Damian Priest. So
that's right.
They're safe. He is performing at the Grammys.
He's
this week
performing at the Grammys this weekend. Yes.
So that might be why. I think you think the Miz will show up at the Grammys during the performance.
Oh no, he'll probably do a spoof segment the next night on Raw.
That would be great. Where's this music video that John Morrison was supposedly working on?
That's where you debut it next Monday. They keep referring to Drew as the presumptive next challenger. We're not even going to go through any rigmarole. We're just going to say we're presuming he's the next challenger. For when, we don't know. He's just the next challenger.
Well, why say presumptive if it's not going to be in question? Why not just say he's the next challenger? I'm guessing he has another match.
I think you got to do another Sheamus match, which we'll get into, which definitely begs the question why they did what they did last week. Schreiber
So hold on a second. So one more thing is this was where they aired the WrestleMania ad, and is the tagline for this year's WrestleMania,
finally, WrestleMania is back in business.
Back in business. That's the tag.
Yeah.
Which I actually don't hate. I mean, obviously it makes...
Oh, you'll hate it after everyone's got to insert it into their promos.
Back in business. Is there a song called Back in Business by AC/DC?
Well, guess what, Shane? I don't care if you've got an MBA. I'm going to go back to business school, too, and it's at WrestleMania.
There you go. But, of course, they can also change the lyrics to Back in Black to Back in Business.
Because I'm back in business. I don't know how that remix will sound.
I don't know. But I don't know if this was intentional, but it definitely works with Lashley and the Hurt Business main eventing. What do you think?
Yep. And then, they just said limited combo and single tickets on sale next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Then Schreiber interviewed Drew. He's the only challenger around here. He beat 5 men at Elimination Chamber, then got jumped by Lashley. He asks Bobby, where is your heart, your passion, your balls? And with that, Sheamus attacks him, stating, this isn't over. 20 years of living in your shadow, and he is going to cause misery for Drew every day of his life.
It's never over, John. So go on all the way at least until WrestleMania, and probably beyond.
Okay. That was the alternate backup for WrestleMania's tagline.
It's, back, always in business?
Always in business, even during a pandemic. We had several promos tonight for Rhea Ripley, but just the same promo they've been running, so still coming soon. McIntyre demands a rematch with Sheamus, and it's going to be a no disqualification match, and Adam Pearce just nods his head. He said, you know what? We've got a 25-minute gap in this show that we didn't book, so you guys can have it. Braun Strowman met up with R-Truth. I don't know what the hell this was. Truth said that you're a fragment of my imagination, and he tried to wipe out his memory.
Dude, I'm
I
trying
know
to
what this was. I refuse to recap this stuff.
like I'm trying to think about the logic here. I know R-Truth is supposed to be a comedy character, but I'm trying to think what the thinking was in the creation of the joke. And I'm trying to even identify what the joke is in the segment.
There was no punchline. It was like unless you're like the Men in Black joke at the end. I don't know. It was just
so Braun. They had advertised that Braun was going to be demanding an apology from Shane.
Yes,
and then all of a sudden we see R-Truth here apologizing to Braun. So I think the joke was that Truth thought he was supposed to apologize instead of Shane, and then it just like it devolved into this kind of endless supply of like non sequiturs, ending with this Men in Black reference, and that was that. Like what? I'm trying to think where the logic was from step A to step B to step C.
It's a trick for us to spend time. I won't do it. I just won't do it. I don't care. Braun Strowman comes out and he says, "You're either laughing with him or at him." And he thinks Shane is laughing at him when he made the line that a textbook Shane is studying from was above his reading comprehension skills. Yeah, Braun, I think he was laughing at you with that joke. He threatens to break Shane's neck, but he doesn't want to get fired. Nothing says big angry monster like not upsetting the boss to affect his employment status. So he wants some respect. Shane comes out, gets into the ring. He says, "I apologize." And then he walked out, went back onto the stage, hesitates, and then leaves as Braun is annoyed. This would pay off in grand fashion later on.
Slow build.
A very slow build for a very dull joke at the end of this whole thing. Shane's backstage. He's asked if he had more to say. He just walks away. Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, no disqualification match. We had Drew jump Sheamus at the entrance, and then they fought on the floor. They got weapons involved. Sheamus fishhooked Drew, putting his fingers in his mouth, which Joe called the Dublin Smile. Drew stopped a kendo stick shot with a pair of belly-to-bellies. They go on the floor, and Drew is shoved into the post, then dumped onto the desk. Into the near falls we go. There's a chair that's used. Future shock onto the chair. Sheamus kicks out. The Claymore is set up, but then Drew gets a chair thrown at him. Knee strike. He kicks out. Then Sheamus is thrown into a chair, and a Claymore sends Sheamus down to the floor. And as both are on the floor, they each grab steps. They run at one another, and both knock each other down. And the referee looks at the brutality from these steel steps, and he calls off the match, needing medical assistance after 19 minutes and 24 seconds. I have an aside about the booking of all this, but I thought these guys had another great match, just as they did last week. They have been the highlight of Raw back-to-back weeks.
A great hard-hitting match. I think better than last week if you just simply look at the match quality, the body of the match and not the finish. It was certainly, I felt, a pay-per-view quality match, even at a championship level, if that was the case. Sadly, it wasn't. And everything outside of like the bell-to-bell action, I thought was pretty poor. I certainly had no anticipation for this match after having just seen it a week ago. The feud at this point is cold, and there's nothing at stake whatsoever. So I actually found it pretty disengaging, despite how great the physicality was.
I thought for sure, like this finish, it obviously sets up a rematch. And I thought for sure they were going to announce that for Drew to get a shot at Bobby Lashley, he has to beat Sheamus. And probably, given the finish of this, I thought last man standing match or something to that effect. And if they go that direction, it just makes last week's clean win by Drew, why either they're just completely not thinking, or that's really a sign of just how week to week they are booking this stuff. Because if you are building to a blow-off match where Drew has to beat Sheamus, well, you've given people that, and not with some fluke. They had the hard-hitting, all-out war last week that ended with a decisive end, and you're certainly going to get another match coming out of this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it makes the last week's result make absolutely no sense. And I mean, that's just kind of par for the course for this program, isn't it? Everything's been screwed up with this thing from the beginning. And I feel bad because you could have had a really nice feud with a great match for the championship on a pay-per-view in a nice compact story if I think they stuck to plan. But instead, they got screwed out of the match. Really, they got screwed out of the match at the Rumble. And then it was Chamber. And then no title at stake. And then you give the finish away. And then you redo it 2 other times on TV. How can I care after that?
I'd have to give it more thought, but you could absolutely, with the benefit of hindsight, have gotten to all of these exact same destinations and just move things around differently to, instead of doing the turn the way they did, it could have been Sheamus that ends up doing the turn that leads to Drew losing the title to The Miz in the Money in the Bank scenario. Like, Drew and Sheamus go in as friends to the Chamber. Drew has to beat his best friend, and then in the aftermath, Sheamus cheap shots him, and then Miz gets his win, spins off Drew and Sheamus, and Bobby Lashley can win the title in the meantime, and then you have your big Drew Bobby Lashley showdown. You accomplish everything that they are still doing now, but it would put so much more emphasis on a reason for the Sheamus Drew feud. It gives Sheamus a reason that he's frustrated that after all this time he loses and his best friend beats him, and then you could do that match at one of these pay-per-views and the winner gets Lashley at the end.
It's significant. That scenario significantly elevates Sheamus. Instead of in this situation, having him lose at the Elimination Chamber, lose to Drew McIntyre clean, and somehow trying to build 2 more rematches coming out of it. I don't know why it's like this, other than the fact that they probably didn't have the foresight that they wanted to push this for 2-3 more weeks, and they did last week.
So that was that, and they never addressed this. So I don't know. Like, again, on this show, not to say they probably did not like plug that Fastlane is on this date, but they're not building any programs like for Fastlane. Like, this is all I can imagine them doing is Sheamus and Drew at Fastlane. But again, we've got one more Raw before the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I can't see like the Shane Braun stuff culminating at Fastlane.
Oh, dude, they're probably going to do like a spelling bee at Fastlane.
Yeah, sure.
They reminded you of the worst feud of the year involving Randy Orton and The Fiend to get all those images back in your mind. And then our newest member of the broadcast team, Kevin Patrick, is in the back interviewing AJ and Omos and asked him about his plans for WrestleMania. And AJ said, "Oh, heck, WrestleMania, that's 5 weeks away. That might as well be 5 years away. You watch this show?" Styles has no idea what he's doing for WrestleMania. Not a fucking clue. But he just decides to talk about Randy Orton and all the voodoo that's going on, courtesy of Little Miss Witch Alexa Bliss. Words he actually used. And Orton shows up and asks if it's funny to have a man's mind messed with. AJ calls him weak, and they set up a match.
You know, I guess the lead story of this show was them trying to set up a reason for AJ Styles and Randy Orton to dislike one another. I can't really say the material was very strong, but at least like the match on paper was good enough. But man, like these segments did not need to occur. I don't think. I was ready for the match, man, but not these interviews.
Do you think it's funny to have a man's mind messed with? Next week, they're setting up, they announced 2 title matches. Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin will defend the Raw tag titles against the only other team in existence, the New Day. And then we're going to get Riddle and Mustafa Ali for the United States title.
All right. Great.
So with that, Shelton Benjamin took on Xavier Woods, where Shelton was in control, started focusing on Kofi on the floor, and was pinned with an inside cradle because he was distracted in 346.
Yeah, who was it? Like he was distracted by Kofi?
He was talking to Kofi and I guess talking shit, and then Woods capitalized and cradled him. You
know, logical booking to set up the challengers.
Sure.
I guess I still have negative interest in this pairing because I'm still very much reeling from their series of 4 tag title matches from November, December that just seemed completely endless. And that's not even including the multi-man matches and singles matches that these two pairings have had. So I don't care about this at all.
Then we had what had to be the most excruciating segment of the night. Not the worst, but the most excruciating. And that was Sarah Schreiber with Riddle and his scooter. He said that Retribution will not break his focus, but he's more worried about where he's going to park this goddamn scooter. Because if he leaves it in the back, he's going to get a ticket. But if he takes it out with him to the ring, Ali is going to break the scooter. So New Day shows up, and they just are going back and forth here. They're talking about Call of Duty. They agree to watch the scooter, and then Kofi and Riddle have an impromptu thumb war. Did I get all of this?
Yeah, well, they were specifically making Jack jokes because he was going to face Slapjack.
Yeah.
So they were joking about...
flip him like a flapjack.
Yeah, and Matt Riddle said, I'm more of a French toast guy, and brought up Reginald because he's French. I hated everybody in this sketch. Everybody involved here is the biggest heel to me on this show. This segment made me regret ever getting into Kofi Mania. Kofi Kingston to me has gained so much go away heat from me. Just never mind the disappointment. I think of, the way he lost the title and then just subsequently not selling that loss at all. But man, he was aggravating here. And I get it. That's the New Day's thing. They're supposed to be obnoxious. This was like to another extent.
This is like you're on hour 4 of a road trip, and it's like the guy in the back seat that just can't shut up.
Oh, this was terrible. I would have absolutely shut the show off if I wasn't reviewing it.
So Riddle took on Slapjack. They had a match. I mean, it was fine. Riddle hit the final flash, and Slapjack had his foot under the rope, so he had to pull him out. So Slapjack kicked out. And then we found out Slapjack's move.
Yeah.
Yes, we found out that Slapjack has a move, which Tom Phillips said he's going for the snapback. The snapback. What Way's wearing?
The snapback, yeah. It was
Riddle blocked the snapback performed by Slapjack. And he hit the final flash. And the Bro Derek. He won in 3:54. Ali was losing his mind. I don't know why. Who cares if this guy lost for the upteenth time? You have your title match next week. You've already branded that this guy is the weak link of your team. Who cares? Who cares if he won?
Who cares is the right question, I think, John.
Like, these guys lose every week. Ali gets upset every week. He's established. These are losers that you have attached yourself to. It's not going to affect your title match next week. This was a non-title match. What in God's name did a win over Riddle mean for Slapjack? Nothing.
I get the feeling they're trying to set up some sort of Retribution turning on Ali thing by having Ali.
They're going to get Retribution?
Yes, Retribution is going to get Retribution finally on somebody, and that'll be the leader, Ali. That's the sense that I get. But I have to say, I'm a huge fan of Ali, but I don't think he pulls off this sort of leader freakout role very well. To me, it seems like they're trying to do the Brody Lee Dark Order. Can't you idiots do anything right? And
this
Ali
is not the Dark Order.
Ali just does not pull that off very well at all. So man, and I don't. This story has just been bad from the beginning. So I really hope that this is all just leading up to the breakup of the group, and you can finally, this poor Shane Thorne, man, the saving grace is that he has a mask on. Okay.
How many times have we said that for these people? It's just hey, they're under masks. They're okay. They can be preserved.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that he has a role after this. Cause yeah, it's all just been pretty bad. So what is it, Ali and Riddle next week?
Ali and Riddle for the title next week.
All right.
Shane's in his office. Pierce says, did you have something else to say to Braun? And Shane calls him nosy, but then requests that Braun meet him in the ring for this unbelievable segment. So Shane is in the ring. Braun comes out and he starts screwing around with the microphone and gets a second microphone, goes to the floor, and then goes onto the ramp as he proclaims, "I'll say this face to face," as he has moved away from the man. He admits he likes to have fun at other people's expense. And then he gets serious and says, "I don't know if I can say this." And this is going so painfully slow. Shane says, "I would never bring you out here to look stupid." Stupid is an abhorrent word. You're not dumb, stupid. They're terrible, terrible words. And I can tell from the non-verbal cues that you are upset with me. Then he got into the worst jokes this side of Jerry Lawler about stupid is as stupid does, and other jokes that he's heard others say, like falling out of a stupid tree and hitting every branch on the way down. Which I had always heard that joke as falling out of the ugly tree and hitting every branch on the way down, therefore impairing your appearance further.
Okay. Maybe it can work several ways.
He clarifies, this is not me stating these jokes. These are others. But as the saying goes, big man, little brain. Like the dinosaurs. And Braun, I would never call you stupid. Braun is just standing in this ring. And then Shane just ethers him. He goes, Braun. And this is what prompts Braun to bolt up the stage and bumble through this awful fucking segment. He storms off after Shane. We see a car in the back. Braun gets to the vehicle. It drives off. So Braun just casually walks off into the distance to find his next purpose in this company. And then Shane appears and says, "So stupid." I will say, it because of how painfully goddamn slow this was, I did chuckle at the punchline at the end of this. But my God, was this painful to get to, and this feud could not possibly lack any more interest for me.
Often, in professional wrestling, in reviewing these shows, we stumble into segments that I definitely waver from, like, oh man, this is awful, this is terrible to get through, to like, I kind of enjoy it because it's so
You're a
wild
masochist.
and so ridiculous. And often it just takes me time to warm up to it. Like the feed is something that is very much kind of hit and miss in that department. Like some weeks is just, this is a miserable segment. Like maybe this week I'll have that reaction. But some weeks it's like, they had this guy burn a man alive. That is hilarious. I am loving this shit just on a very ironic, I'm not supposed to like it level. But it takes me time to get there. This program, I'm already there. Like from day one. This is so ridiculous. This is so outrageous. This is like so, what? They did this on TV? Like that I'm already in. I thought this was weird, hilarious in just how awful it was. And I am curious to know, like, what Shane McMahon is up to. What is his play in all this?
Well, we're going to find out way over the next coming weeks as the chapters unfold of this deep story. This is like a big program on Raw we've got going on.
Oh, one of the biggest, yeah.
Tom Phillips calls this a, quote, fascinating situation. Fascinating situation. They aired a replay of My Hole when Lana beat Nia Jax in the tables match because in the next segment, Lana and Naomi get their big women's tag title match.
Yeah, I totally forgot that these two were the number one contenders. I think like Kate reminded me or something on Friday. I had totally forgotten.
Worth the wait. Nia Jax comes out with Reginald, who is now with her. Baszler is annoyed at this, but Jax says that he's down on his luck after being fired by Carmella, and he's kind of cute. So Naomi hit the spinning pescado to the floor. This set up the break. Baszler then stomped Lana's elbow during the break. There's a hot tag to Naomi, and a head scissors drives Jax's face into the canvas. Jax then runs into her partner. Reginald trips up Naomi, and then she grabs him by the hair. Lana takes out Reginald with a baseball slide drop kick, but then Jax knocks off Naomi and takes Lana, hits her choke powerbomb, and pins Lana in 7 minutes and 40 seconds. And Jax then carried Reginald to the back.
Yeah, I really, the match was fine. It was like relatively short, but I think they like got a nice little burst out of it. I guess like in my mind, is there a full story here with this Lana thing, or is it just like kind of like a convenient thing they can go back to occasionally whenever they just need a match? Because it's like very start and stop, and not necessarily in the way that makes you want to see Lana ultimately achieve. Because she has ultimately achieved, like she's had that culminating moment already several times. She's beaten Nia several times in matches, in the tables match. Came short here, but was that even ever the ultimate goal? Like, has she ever expressed wanting to win these tag belts? So I just don't know. I think they had this device of like, oh, by the way, they're number one contenders. And I think they forgot about it. And this week they just wanted to cash in so that they could move on. But I don't really know what to think of this Lana story.
Yeah, this kind of just felt like a commitment that they filled. And I mean, these tag championships, it's just, I don't know. It just feels like kind of no real foresight of where we're going with this division. I mean, these were just the latest challengers they beat, and now they'll face Sasha and Bianca all over again, which, I mean, that's not about building those two up as a tag team. That's more so focused on the challengers and their specific program rather than the tag titles. We saw a clip of a straight up Steve Austin. The season finale was tonight, where Charlotte Flair was the guest, and they were getting into this sea breacher. This thing looked like it was right out of a Bond film.
Sure, yeah. And
Sarah Schreiber interviewed Randy Orton. Well, I thought it was a cool looking thing.
It was, yes.
Okay. Schreiber interviews Randy Orton. She says that others in the locker room are concerned about him. He doesn't believe he has friends, and none of them have come and said that to his face. Cool. We had another Ruby Riott promo. Then Sarah Schreiber was very busy.
Rhea Ripley. They're not going to promo Ruby Riott. Are you
That's
kidding
right.
me?
Yeah, there was no Ruby Riott on this show. Schreiber interviewed Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose, and they are asked their thoughts of getting a title match at WrestleMania. They have not outright declared, like Charlotte, but they are no less serious about the Raw Women's title. They should not be overlooked. We are just as ambitious as anyone else. So Charlotte comes in. She admits she is ambitious, and Mandy and Dana have 5 weeks to show what they have and hopes that their bite is as strong as their bark.
So in other words, we don't want those tag team titles, even though we're a tag team. Don't plague us with that. And I guess this probably just sets up Charlotte matches with the two of them for the next 2 weeks.
And I mean, again, it was a week without Asuka, so presumably is still injured. And when you look at it tonight of who was missing, like Asuka, Keith Lee is still off, and then you mentioned Damian Priest as well. Like they were somewhat shorthanded tonight.
Yeah, interesting.
Kevin Patrick again with AJ and Omos. AJ doesn't regret his comments. He says Orton is crazy in the head. It's not his fault that his brain is all twisted. He should focus on the Fiend and wonders what the voices in his head will say about a loss heading into WrestleMania. This could ruin everything.
Yes.
So that's our main event. AJ and Randy Orton.
This whole like last half hour of the show was just felt like they were really stretching here, because like they essentially re-aired like the bulk of the Lashley Miz match while AJ Styles was already in the ring. So AJ had made his entrance, they come back from commercial, and they basically aired like a huge chunk of this Lashley recap for some reason while AJ was still there. And then we finally got to the match with like 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, they still gave them like 15 and a half here. Orton decked Styles early on, teased the RKO. AJ got dropped on the desk, and then Orton had a stare down with Omos. They came back from the break. AJ is weakening the hamstring to weaken it for the calf crusher. And they got the heat on Orton until he landed this discus clothesline, taking off AJ's head, and his lip was busted afterward. The phenomenal forearm gets stopped by Orton. He goes for the draping DDT, but AJ stops, rolls for the calf crusher. It's blocked initially before he locks it in, but Orton escapes, hits the draping DDT, and as he's setting up for the RKO, Omos yanks AJ and pulls him to the floor when Alexa Bliss, Little Miss Witch, appears on the screen. She lights a match and then blows it off as pyro goes off in 3 of the 4 corners.
Pyro.
What does that mean? And then
exploding Raw main event.
Yes. So after years of Randy Orton facing off with Kane with the exact same pyro, there's something fishy about this version because he starts spitting up that substance, as the announcers label it. It also goes by its street name, Black Shit. And then Styles hits the phenomenal forearm. So on a show where Drew and Sheamus were just too battered to continue, it's too dangerous, this guy is like coughing up black phlegm that he could have an internal issue. Fair game, and we're going to count 3 because goddamn we need a winner. And Styles pins Randy Orton, upsets all of his momentum going into WrestleMania, and he wins in 15:36, and it ends with Alexa laughing.
Yeah, I couldn't wait for this show to end tonight. And man, it's gotten to the point where I don't even care about good wrestling anymore on these shows because I have no reason to care about the outcomes. Most of the time, there are no outcomes, like tonight. Like in both of the great matches we had tonight between Sheamus and Drew McIntyre and this fucking main event. We did get an outcome in this main event, but it came after a man vomited black tar. So it was a pretty tough Raw to get through, I have to say.
As you look, not even towards like match quality, but on the Raw side, take out Drew and Lashley. What matches on the Raw side do you want to see for WrestleMania?
Rhea Ripley. They can give me something with her and Asuka. I mean, even her, a 3-way between her, Asuka, Charlotte. Trying to think what else. Bad Bunny. I'm curious to see what involvement he has.
2 nights. This is not good. You should have like a list by now. We're 5 weeks out.
We don't know what Keith Lee will do. There's some potential there.
But with who? Who do you want to see Keith Lee with? You have your pick of the roster.
I mean, Scooter Man. Ali, maybe. I don't know.
Before we go to feedback, yeah, I'm not going to pressure you to rack your brain here. Regarding the Peacock deal, Brandon Thurston /Howard at WrestleNomics just posted this on the WrestleNomics Patreon that he did reach out to Rick Cordella, who's the executive vice president and chief revenue officer at Peacock TV, regarding if there's going to be any cycling of content for the WWE Network on Peacock, or if all of it will be put up there. And his quote to Brandon was, we're going to put it all on Peacock, no cycling. It just takes time to re-encode all the hours. It's labor intensive with the metadata, imagery, closed captioned, etc. And the team has it as a top priority. So it sounds like everything on the network will make it there. They've said by SummerSlam, but like it just sounds like it's did they not take this into account when you're taking a network that has so much content on it?
So maybe what's happening is the WWE Network runs on Mac OS and Peacock runs, I guess, I don't know, Windows.
That's a lot of encoding if they have to do that for everything.
Dude, that's a lot of work. It's a nightmare.
There's something like 10,000 hours up there.
Oh, God. I know. Has to be done. But, you kind of, it tells you maybe how quickly this deal was made and how close to, unfortunately, this kind of tentpole event of WrestleMania, this deal was made. Because I think if they had their choice, they would be spending 6 months on this rollover to make it completely seamless on the day of. Like, oh, day of, switch over. You get all the same content, all the bugs are worked out, but because of WrestleMania, they're pushing this forward. They're putting a stop date to the WWE Network, and people, they're gonna have to catch up afterwards. So
they'll still have NXT going up the day after. Raw and SmackDown will be on 30-day delays from their air date to when they can go up. I will say this. I know that there are fans that will be upset about all this library stuff, but the fact is that, like, we see those charts of, like, what is consumed. It's a very small number that are watching these old episodes. It's a very, very small amount of people that it's probably a very vocal minority, and you are, in theory, even if you're not watching all of this stuff regularly, it's the idea that I was getting all this and now you're taking something away. But, like, I don't know if that becomes a number one priority to make sure we have every episode of Nitro up on Peacock, because it's servicing it's a very loyal, but it is a relatively small number in that grand scheme of what is overall still a niche service, where the vast majority, they are there for the live programming and these forthcoming pay-per-views, not going back in time to go watch Evolve 1.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if it screws anything up, I think it's our plans for Rewind Away, because, I mean, it doesn't affect us.
We'll get this in. We'll get this in right at the end, before the turnover.
But I mean, all our Rewind Aways are typically from the WWE Network archive, so
we'll still have it.
We'll still have it, but people might not be able to watch along, unfortunately. So you just have to rely on on John Pollock's great recaps from this point forward.
I am really good, so you have that going for you. All right, let's head on over to the forum and tonight's episode. What did you like about Raw? I feel like we took a sledgehammer to most of it, but I think Drew and Sheamus are having some excellent matches. Bobby Lashley feels like a big deal on the show, and they deserve credit for that. This is not like they just snapped their fingers and said, "Hey, Bobby Lashley's our guy we're going with." They've had a concerted effort to put Bobby Lashley at this level. So when you put the title on him, not only does it feel fresh and new, even though it's a guy who is older, he feels fresher because he's being put in this position for the first time. So, I mean, if you want to have one big match that people are invested in, it better be your top match that you can put on one of the nights of Mania with Lashley and Drew. And I think they are in good shape with that program.
The things that they know they have to take seriously, they typically do take seriously. And that is the main event. And as far as what else was a positive on this show?
Well, the scooter was intact, right? No one stole it or broke it, or no ticket was issued that we know of. I guess Riddle didn't get to the bag. We didn't see him get it back from the New Day. So
yeah, that was about it. I definitely urge everybody to go watch that Shane and Braun segment. It's one of those things that it will be a topic of discussion. It was.
I won't lie. Like, I chuckled at Shane's line at the end after all of that painful. Like, it reminded me of the Family Guy sketch where Peter gets up and he, like, travels across the country just to knock on someone's door. And I think the punchline is, like, he kicks the guy or something like that. But it's like a 3-minute lead up to the joke at the end.
Right. All right. Yeah.
This was not exactly Family Guy quality, but hey. 3.57 is what the forum has issued this episode of Raw. We start off with Benjamin. This is the first Raw I've watched in a long time. Great decision making tonight, Benjamin. I was buoyed by your semi-positive review of last week's show, hoping I was going to see some form of consistency within the Raw narrative environment. Their MCU. Okay, a lot of mistakes being made here in terms of projections, Benjamin. But alas, it's back to being a weekly diuretic of WWE isms. I like the Miz's promo, but it was another, what my daddy would call a rolls can hardly. A car that rolls briskly down one hill and can hardly get up the next. This is like quite the elaborate feedback. Miz is just too pure for the WWE, but he honestly shouldn't be anywhere else. He's a lighthouse in the shitstorm that is Raw. Drew McIntyre and Sheamus's Hoss fight 2, Hoss Harder, was pretty good. I really enjoyed watching two beefy grown men smack their bucket-covered heads together. Clangy noise Hoss fights make Vince's grapefruits very swole indeed. Why did I get this one? I feel this is Brandon from New Jersey after some alcohol. I really hope this Wyatt Orton program culminates in a triumphant WrestleMania return for Randy's own. Also, AJ versus Randy was some good work, and then the most predictably WWE diuretic leads to another downpour of goofy mud butt shy stream. Okay, I'm moving on. You were doing okay. I think you went a little too long on this one, but I do appreciate the wordsmith here, Benjamin.
Tough to follow that, but counterparts will be trying here. Richard, he says, oof, this was bad. From a quick turnaround from Miz and Lashley to Rock'em Sock'em Drew and Sheamus, I thought this was going to be not a good episode. Then we got the whole stupid, and I'm using that word better than Shane did, story with Braun and Shane. I feel that is leading by far as the worst segment of the year. It got so bad I put on my vinyl copy of an old Genesis album as a soundtrack, and I enjoyed it a lot more. And we end with another round of How to Freak Out Orton Part 55. I've honestly lost count of this, and I'm genuinely afraid of what they have planned for those two at Mania. Raw as a whole sucked. 2 out of 10. Genesis, interesting choice to go with that segment.
We have Kate here. I'm almost afraid to admit that I like segments of Raw now because whenever we get something good, it's then repeated for weeks with diminishing returns. Having The Miz get a rematch and last 2 segments and a commercial break against Lashley was not as compelling as him getting crushed like a bug last week. Adding a no DQ stip for Drew and Sheamus, too, didn't make for a more interesting match. That said, I would have taken more repetition over whatever the hell is going on with Shane and Braun Strowman. I mean, maybe they have some angle planned out, but I somehow doubt it. It surprised me a little that there was nothing done to acknowledge International Women's Day. I'm pretty sure that they've noted it. They did have a brief video that they aired of clips of younger women talking, and Charlotte was part of it as well. It was very short, but they did air something acknowledging it. Kate ends with, I don't want to be entirely negative, but it's harder this week than most. Lashley's new entrance package and light show was very cool looking. That was, I like that. And they did their pyro to work. And they did get their pyro to work pretty well. Yes, that is a feather in their cap this week. I can't remember what I was going to say, so we can just move on.
Was it about International Women's Day?
It was something to do with, what we didn't get back this week, and I was somewhat surprised by, was no countdown clock.
Yeah, I mean, at this point...
Did AEW curse countdown clocks that no one wants to try them after last night?
Possibly, yeah. And also at this point it would be... Don't you think it'd be too gimmicky?
This company, like, they find something that works. It's like, to Kate's point, it's like they will do it into the ground. I don't even think the clock is necessarily the worst idea of just keeping the show moving and that you know something that's coming up. I don't think they had a whole lot to count down to tonight beyond Styles and Orton.
Well, I'm sure that a clock will figure its way into something somehow. Let's go to Nick, who says this show is a bummer. If people aren't off the Fiend train already, having us wait nearly 3 months for his return with goofy segment after goofy segment certainly isn't a sustainable way to build to what I imagine WWE will position as a marquee Mania match. The Shane Strowman segments are equally foolish, and I'm genuinely unsure where this cartoonish animosity appeared from in the first place, but I am semi-confident that their Mania bout could be a fun car crash. Everyone worked hard in the 2 big rematches, but it feels like we're dragging our way into Fastlane at this rate. And to cap it all off, it appears as though Reginald is going to bookend our Mondays and Fridays. Lovely. Looking ahead, given all this positive buzz and booking, do you think Lashley should drop the title at Mania or have several strong defenses and build Drew back up to win at SummerSlam?
I think that you should never assume a major outcome for a Mania, especially this far out. You just don't know. And it's hard because without the crowds, you can't, in a traditional setting, there could be a big sign of momentum behind Lashley, and you could still look at other signs of that. I do not dismiss the idea of, if this is working with Bobby, extend it. Drew needs challengers, and you can hold that off. It's like the idea that Drew gets this big title win in front of a crowd at Mania, hold that off. Like, make that something he comes up short in. I think that there's a reasonable chance you could do that. Whether that's the decision now, that could easily change over the next 5 weeks.
Without knowing how much, the audience would be taken to Lashley as a champion, it was hard for me to say this beforehand. But I think having a week of it and seeing how good of a job they've done with him, I definitely think you keep the belt on him longer than 2 months. And I think that story of that heartbreak of Drew having that moment without the crowd last year and then going ahead this year, trying to get that moment and coming short, I think there's way more drama in that. And then later, maybe next year, maybe 2 years later, finally having Drew McIntyre get that culminating moment, it would be that much better. So I think he should lose at WrestleMania personally.
And with crowds now, like tonight, I think the Hurt Business would have been super over tonight.
Oh, especially that promo. Like how could he was a total babyface.
Last one. Am I up?
It's you, yeah.
Okay, we got Brody from Vancouver. I haven't watched a full episode of Raw in almost 3 years. Bringing back a lot of fans tonight. Last night was the first pay-per-view I've tuned into to watch since the Rumble in 2017. You guys have kept me up to date, and I appreciate it. Bobby's new entrance and presentation is so refreshing to see. Braun and Shane bores me to tears. Randy and AJ went exactly how I thought it would, and I still don't know who we're supposed to cheer for. How has Sheamus been in Drew's shadow for 20 plus years? He's a 4-time champion, King of the Ring, Money in the Bank winner, multiple tag team champion, all while Drew was in 3MB and riding the indies. I get the jealousy logic, but the shadow line confused me. AEW question, do you think there's any chance they completely reshoot the explosions on Dynamite this week during a Moxley promo as a proper write-off to try to justify that Sunday was on purpose? If I would not completely dismiss it, but there is no way I could see them trying that live again.
Yeah, nor do I think it would be any sort of make good. Like, I think there are other ways to write Moxley off if you're going to do that.
You'd have to tape that one in advance, and then it's like you lose the crowd reacting to it unless you put in the fake noise on top of it. I think it's a lot of effort to go to that extreme.
What would the point be? Just to be able to say, hey, we can do explosions. Like, it would just be petty.
Deliver on what was advertised, I guess, would be the sentiment. But I don't
over. The moment's lost, you know? Yeah. Like, you could show a big bang. It's not going to, like, change anything. I just look for creative storytelling. You know, they dug themselves into a bit of a hole here. And I want to see how they dig themselves out.
Well, that's part of the intro. I do think Dynamite's going to do a very good number on Wednesday. I think the combination of coming off the pay-per-view, I think actually the ending of the pay-per-view probably drew some curiosity of how they address it. And Christian probably being on the show should add a lot. So, and it's not like they have a nothing NXT they're going against. So it's a pretty competitive week on Wednesday. Will we get a countdown clock to one or both game-changing announcements on NXT?
Do you think they spread the announcements throughout the night?
They should if they're smart. I would space them out.
Sure. Yeah.
Why announce both when you can let people? You know what? Regal should get like choked up and he gets some stomach cramps, and then we got to delay the announcement till later in the show.
Oh, very nice.
And drag those announcements out.
And the mic doesn't work, and he has to kind of go to the back, and we all have to follow him.
And then that substance comes up, and he can't deliver the announcements until next week.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. I think they should just have a clock on all the time. Just like
people love clocks. At the end of it, something's got to happen.
Countdowns. It's great.
Well, the countdown begins to Ask Away, the mailbag show. It will be out on Tuesday. We'll go through all of the questions that have been accrued in the mailbag up at forum.postwrestling.com. Then Wednesday night, we're live after Dynamite. We'll chat about the game-changing announcements and a whole rundown of Dynamite. Looking forward to that. We are live Wednesday night for our double ice cap and espresso patrons. And Way, anything else you want to mention?
Just one more time, Post Wrestling Cafe members get 20% off this week on the Post Pro Res tee. So log in at postwrestlingcafe.com.
All right. As the man says, get the Post Pro Res t-shirt so you don't look like a fucking jobber.